Some seriously big thunderstorms, incessant spring sunshine, and will we see any rain in the forecast? We'll try and answer that big question in this week's Met Office Deep Dive. We'll be looking also closely at those big thunderstorms that occurred yesterday and talking about the weather this week, which is basically dry and for many of us sunny, and it has been a very dry and sunny spring so far. Thanks for being there. My name's Alex Deakin. I'm a meteorologist and climate communicator here at the Met Office, and thank you very much for being there. This is the Met Office Deep Dive, 20-30 minutes or so, where we unpack what's happened, what's going to happen in our atmosphere. And if you want to get involved, please do so. We love reading your comments. If you don't already subscribe to the Met Office YouTube channel, then please do that. Give us the thumbs up as well. If you hit that thumbs up button, you'll be doing us a massive favour. And share the love. This is for the Met heads. If you know another weather enthusiast, then let them know that we're on here. Let them know that we do this. We're live every Friday as well, so you can interact with us, ask us anything you like. But would really love to hear your comments about this week's Deep Dive, so put that in the chat. Lots to go through. It's been a busy few days. Even though high pressure is still pretty much in control, there's still plenty to talk about weather-wise. Some huge downpours yesterday. But as always, as we get late spring into summer, they're very hit and miss. So, if you caught a downpour yesterday, you certainly knew about it, but the vast majority just had a fine and sunny day. So we'll be taking a look at just what happened through Monday afternoon, because it was quite exciting. 14,000 lightning strikes across England and Wales in the 24 hours of Monday. That's quite a few. It was quite an active afternoon, and it was mostly through the course of the afternoon. So let's take a look at those thundery downpours that we saw yesterday. The satellite sequence as we went through the course of the past 24 hours. You can see the little swirl down here. That's an area of low pressure. Our weather's still dominated by high pressure, but we've had this low just edging up from the southwest. It turned things a bit showery in the southwest through Sunday, some heavy thundery showers, and then those thunderstorms got a bit more lively as we went through yesterday afternoon. Let's zoom right in on those, because you can just see the clouds bubbling up here in this zone, just from the northwest of London up to mid and North Wales. They'd really popped off just through the course of the afternoon. You can see them there, pop like little popcorn going off just in that zone right there. Let's zoom in a little bit more, because that's really where all the action is. Started off with the sunshine. Now notice this zone of cloudy weather down to the southwest. That helped to stop too many thunderstorms breaking out here. They were really in this zone. Once the early cloud cleared, then that was where the sun was able to beat down all day, and that's where we got the heating. The sun heats the surface, and when it's moist enough, that rising air develops and gives you those chain of thunderstorms moving along there. That was the zone that saw all the heaviest downpours, quite a lot of hail, a few gusty winds, some lightning strikes that caused some damage, caused some fires, as well as causing a tree fire, a building fire as well. Let's take a look at that lightning as we go through yesterday afternoon. Rewind it back to there, zoom in again, because it's in this chain. It's almost like a line, and that's the convergence line. That's where the thunderstorms were playing through yesterday afternoon. You can see that line, and then there's another line there, and it's in that zone where we saw those thunderstorms breaking out as we went through yesterday afternoon. Either side of it, well, there's the odd shower here and there, but many places, as I said, were dry, fine and sunny. And late in the day, some of those showers drifted north into parts of southwest Scotland. So what was going on with the weather? Well, the weather pattern looked like this. This was our analysis. Every 6 hours, the Met Office makes one of these charts for the analysis of what's going on with the weather, pressure pattern, old school black and white version there. There's the UK, and there you can just about make it out. Low pressure down to the southwest. Generally, this high is still in control, but this low has been shimmying its way northwards. There wasn't much on this weather front. If we zoom in a little bit, we can take a closer look. There wasn't much on this weather front, but that's where that cloudier zone was across the southwest. This little feature here, funky looking feature, that is a convergence line. A convergence line is where the winds are literally converging. Winds of different directions are coming together, and when you get a convergence line, if they're strong enough and opposed to each other enough, there's only one way. If you're colliding two things like that, The wind, this is the surface, it can't go down into the surface. There's only one way that it can go, and that's up. So what happens is the two winds can collide and push the air up. So that, with the heating of the ground from the sun, generates big clouds and eventually thunderstorms, cumulonimbus clouds. So it's in this zone here where the winds are coming in like this from around this low pressure and coming in more from the east, further north. That was the convergence zone. That was where we saw that spark. That's where the thunderstorms really went off, helped by that heating of the sun as well. Something else to show you now. This is where we saw the thunderstorms. So this is the rainfall accumulations through yesterday from those heavy showers and thunderstorms. This is how much rain accumulated, and you can just see the stripes, the lines, as those thunderstorms developed and moved along with the winds, taking them that way, taking them that way. And this yellow outline, well, that's the warning area that the Met Office issued on Sunday for those thunderstorms. So you can see it's a pretty accurate forecast for those warning areas. The darker colours, the darker oranges, that's where we saw the most amount of rainfall. So that's the warning area that we issued. And notice there's quite a strong cut-off there, that line going north. We didn't see many in here, and that's because of that, well, partly because of that cloud that was there initially that stopped that heating. So it didn't have quite as long for the showers to get going here. They weren't quite as powerful. There were other factors, as we'll see shortly, but that was one of the reasons why that cloud here initially, we didn't see as many thunderstorms to the south. There were a few come the afternoon, but they weren't as intense and they weren't as heavy. So that's the zone that we saw those thundery downpours. As I said, they caused a few issues. We had fires reported at buildings struck by lightning, and also some large hailstones recorded. Probably seen a fair few pictures on social media. An example from my very good friend John Hammond, my former colleague at the BBC Weather Centre, still a weather presenter on the BBC, along with a Radio 4 continuity announcer, good mate of mine, very knowledgeable weather presenter and meteorologist. And this is his hand taking the photograph of the hail that he saw in his garden when he got home. And it was still there this morning, actually. There was enough hail, and he lives just outside High Wycombe. There was enough hail, and it was cold enough for it to stick around through the night. And still some slushy deposits left even this morning, so the whole place was covered. Sarah Thornton, if you follow her on Twitter, she posted a load of really good pics about around that area as well, of the looking like snow almost, with a covering in many places of the hailstones. So yeah, a couple of centimetres diameter from the hailstones caused by those thunderstorms. Now let's zoom in a little bit on those storms, because something quite interesting happened. If we show the radar, showing the lightning, but let's just look at those storms as they developed. Again, let's zoom in a little bit, and we can probably pick out. Let's zoom in a bit more. We can pick out, where's Reading? Yeah, I knew Reading was going to pop up. So there's Reading, there's London, and in this zone, High Wycombe's just up there, isn't it? So that's kind of where we saw some of the most powerful showers through yesterday afternoon. And they kind of kept coming for a few hours. If we take it right back to where we can, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, you can see them there developing, kind of spotty, a bit all over the place. But just an hour later, they're kind of developing into bigger, more organised cells. And that one kind of spawns out the back, and then you see another one coming off the back of that one. And this is it's a bit like it's called back building within thunderstorms. So you get a storm, it's actually moving that way bodily. As you can see, they are developing out there. But out of the back of that storm, because of that convergence line, there's winds coming out the back of the storm. It's hitting that convergence line, so it's just keeping things going. So you get what's called back building. So it can seem as if the thunderstorms are stationary. And if we zoom out, you can kind of look, you can kind of see that a little bit better. If you watch this area of rain compared to that zone of thunderstorms, then that area of rain on the radar moves much faster. If you watch it again here, you can see that's moving much faster than that zone there. And the winds aren't very different. So that's a kind of, what you can see there is that storm just back building. So yes, there is a bodily movement of the thunderstorm, but then it back builds again because of the outdraft from the back of the thunderstorm. And again, that convergence line is still in place. So it's just pushing the air up again. So you get another storm building behind one, and that can cause flooding. You know, if you get thunderstorm after thunderstorm after thunderstorm, they are actually slightly different cells. It's not all the same thunderstorm. The thunderstorm is moving, but it's generating a new one behind it, and that back building can drop a lot of rain in the same place if you get the weather situation just right. And it was kind of just right for that. Fortunately, it did move through quite a bit. We think somewhere between about 40 and 50 millimetres may have fallen in an hour. Most of the rain actually missed the Met Office rain gauges. The official wettest place yesterday, I think, had 17 millimetres of rain, but there were quite a few unofficial reports on the network of about 30 to 40 millimetres of rain. We think we may have seen 50 millimetres of rain. The radar was probably overreading because of the amount of hail. So when it's hailing, the radar gets a bit confused by the amount of hailstones, particularly if they're large hail. And so the radar is probably overreading. It's not reflective of how much rain was falling. But we think somewhere between about 30, 40, perhaps as much as 50 millimetres of rain fell in an hour as these storms moved through. And then they moved through up into parts of Wales as well and kept going with that back building. And then later in the day we saw something even more remarkable. We saw some outflow showers developing. I'm going to show you the satellite picture of that. So this is a satellite loop again of those storms. So there's the UK, a lot of low cloud and Har, by the way, around the coasts up in the northeast yesterday. There's that cloud down across the southwest, which at least initially suppressed some of the showers here. But I can just, yes, this zone here where we want to watch. So if we play through that, if it's going to play, there we go. So that cloud cleared, and then just look at that. That's where the convergence zone is. So the winds are coming in here. And then with that low pressure, they're coming in here as well. So that's where you're getting that convergence line. You see those winds just converging, forcing the air up. So that's one of the elements that helps to create the forcing. So the showers are building here. You can see the different nature. You can just about make out, if you can closely there, you can actually see some of the shadows, just how tall those showers are. So you can see the shower clouds in here, that spotty nature, whereas in here it's more of an old weather front. So it's more stratocumulus, altocumulus in here. It's not as active, it's not as tall, but you can actually see the shower clouds building their own, creating their own shadows there. And as we go through the afternoon, well, they really pop off into those cells there, don't they? That's beautiful. Really pop off, and then by the time we get to the evening, so I've cut the time off here, but this is kind of getting into the evening, and you can see the shadows are even stronger now as the sun is setting. You can just see the depth of the clouds here, whereas it did brighten up further south, and there were one or two showers. It just didn't have the same amount of time or the same amount of moisture to generate the showers here. And one thing I want to point out here, this little line that just breaks out here is an outflow. So these showers here are generating, again, pushing an outflow out where the showers, you've got the cooler air that's condensing, that's pushing down through the thunderstorm, and that's moving out, and that's hitting and then rising again as you get that outdraft. It's a bit like a cold front generating ahead of it. So these are outdraft showers. There's a line of them there, just about make it out in there. And there's a really faint one just outside of London there as well. So some really interesting meteorology going on as these showers were building and decaying, generating their own outflow and generating their own little bits of weather, little extra then areas of showers too. So it's slightly different to the back building, but it's again just an example of how thunderstorms breed other thunderstorms. It's not just a case of one shower going up and creating another one. Let me try and demonstrate that with a bit of my world-class geography. So you get the heating of the air, heating of the land rather, which generates, oh, they're not very clear, are they? Why are they not very clear? Anyway, you get heating of the air. Let's draw them with arrows. That's probably easiest. So the land gets heated up by the sun, pushing the air up. You've also got that convergence pushing the air up. The air rises, it cools, and it condenses, and it generates that's not a great thunderstorm, but it generates a thunderstorm. Eventually, if that gets big enough, forms a cumulonimbus, you're going to get rain or hail coming out of it. Now, what that does is it will cut off that updraft, so it kind of kills itself if it's not moving. So if it stays in the same place, a thunderstorm will generate, bubble up, and then kind of kill itself off by the downdrafts generated by the rain and the hail. Now that doesn't happen that often, because most of the time that storm is bodily moving. So you get the updraft and the downdraft in a different position. So if that happens, you get the downdraft, say, coming down here. It hits the ground, it pushes out, and it creates, or helps to create, that next storm. It pushes that out, and it depends on the way that the winds are moving high up in the atmosphere and the way that the storm is moving as to whether you get those downdrafts either cutting off or ahead of it or behind it, and you get the back building as well. So it's all to do with the mechanics of what's going on through the atmosphere, because the winds are moving at different directions as you go up through the sky. So there's really interesting dynamics when it comes to thunderstorms, different types of thunderstorms, what triggers them, what creates the next one, and where they form in relation to that first one as well. So it's really quite interesting. I've kind of covered that before a little bit on the deep dive. But yeah, a little bit there about the dynamics of thunderstorms. And you could really see that quite clearly yesterday with that. There's a still of that image again there. So these thunderstorms here just generating that line, that outflow, because it's flowing out from that center within there. I could probably draw on here, can I? Yeah, so you've got an outflow coming from this thunderstorm, and that is sparking this whole arc of extra cumulus, probably at this stage. This cumulus bubbling up late in the day across the northwest. And there's a very similar one in here. It's quite a faint line, but just coming out from this front line of thunderstorms, there's another very faint one there. And if you play through the sequence, you can just see that moving out and expanding out from that. Really quite interesting. I have to say a huge, huge thank you to Dan Holly. Dan Holly is one of our Deputy Chief Meteorologists. He was on yesterday. He was studying all of this. I had a long chat with him this morning. He pointed these out to me. He's a very, very knowledgeable chap. Used to be on Anglia TV. And yeah, not only that, he's also very, very good at this kind of in-depth meteorology. Was on the case today, so a big thank you to Dan Holly for pointing that out. He also spotted, or was also kind of briefing us yesterday morning, and this was part of his weather brief yesterday morning, highlighting the different areas within the showers yesterday. So let's just play this back again. If we go through this, there's kind of three areas at work here yesterday. There's the zone where, in here, let me draw on it. Yeah, there's the zone in here. Let's restart that. This zone here, where you've got all the active thunderstorms. Then we had a few down here, and a few lumpy-looking clouds up here into southwest Scotland. But that was where all the action was, and there were some here and here. But this image is the three different zones cut through the atmosphere. So these are tephigrams, T5grams, what are skew Ts, that's what I think they're called in the United States, showing the three different areas. So this is basically a slice through the atmosphere, one for southwest England, one for the Midlands, Wales, and one for southwest Scotland / East Anglia. And what they're basically showing is the three different regimes. Now this is an ascent going up through the atmosphere. The black solid line is the actual temperature of the air as you're going up through the sky. And this dotted line here is basically a reflection of how much moisture there is in the atmosphere. So the closer that black line is to the dotted line, then the more saturated the air is. And if they're right next to each other, they're running alongside each other, then you've got cloud basically because the air is saturated. What we've got here in that southwest Scotland one is that as you go up through the atmosphere, there's a dry zone. So the dotted line is moving away from the solid line. So there's a dry zone higher up here in that southwestern Scotland area, which is one of the reasons we didn't see the thunderstorms here, because it was quite a bit drier higher up. In the southwest England one, there's also that drier zone as well. And also in here, notice this red area is a bit smaller. There isn't the potential. That red area is what we call CAPE, how much energy there is available to provide thunderstorms. And notice this middle one, that's where that red area is both largest, the most amount of potential energy from a thunderstorm, and it's also where the air all the way up through the atmosphere is more moist. It's closer, the dotted line is closer to the black line, so it's more moist. So you had the potential for moisture, you had a lot of energy, and that's why we saw in that zone more thunderstorms, more powerful thunderstorms, and quite a lot of hail as well. I showed you that picture earlier from Johnny Hammond of the hail. Quite a lot more potential for hail. Interestingly, these down at the bottom are the holograms. That shows the wind direction as you're going up through the atmosphere, and that's what I talked about earlier with the wind shear. You need a bit of wind shear, otherwise if the winds are the same all the way up, then the storm doesn't move, and so it cuts itself off after a while. And actually, the wind shear wasn't that significant in the Midlands and Wales, just enough, obviously, to help that back building because it was being helped by the convergence line as well. The greatest wind shear was down across the southwest, which is where we did see some late showers, but of course we had that layer of cloud initially which helped to suppress. We've got the drier zone, and notice there just isn't the same amount of energy. The potential energy just isn't there either for that one. This one, you've got more potential energy across Scotland, but okay, the air is just too dry at those medium and upper levels. So you're going to get some, we got some little showers, if you like, but just didn't have that moisture, and the ones or two that we did see just kind of died a death across parts of Cambridgeshire. So really interesting day yesterday of weather. Lots to talk about, lots to examine just from those thunderstorms that we saw across parts of Wales and southwest England and the Midlands in particular. So it was a really interesting day. Right now, as I speak, there are more developing. There are a few thunderstorms, but it's not expected to be as intense as the ones we saw yesterday. Obviously, if you get one today and you didn't get one yesterday, then to you it'll be way more intense. But the storms today are notched down. The air's a little bit drier. We're not seeing the same amount of potential energy in the atmosphere as we had yesterday, but there could still be some lively downpours around. But yeah, really interesting. I just wanted to show that again, that one, that warning area, and just how accurate that warning area was for those thunderstorms. They're very hit and miss as those storms move through, but really, you know, pretty accurate weather forecast there from the guys upstairs in the operations centre from Sunday to issue that warning area for Monday afternoon. One other really interesting factor that another Dan from the operations centre, Dan Harris, spotted yesterday afternoon. This is the temperature profile for Blackpool yesterday. It's the temperature and the wind profile for Blackpool. Actually, Blackpool, we think, had its second warmest May day on record yesterday, and the highest temperature recorded at Blackpool since, I think it was September 2023, which is this green line here. That's the temperature scale, up to 27 degrees. I think it was 27.2. The warmest, as I say, the warmest day recorded in Blackpool since September 2023. It was a really warm day, but I want to show you what happened with the wind. This white line is the wind. Now, that's not wind speed, that is the wind direction. So the direction, the degrees going across here. So basically, you're going from like an easterly or a southeasterly wind down here up to 270 be a westerly, 90 be an easterly, 270 be a westerly, 180 be a southerly. So it's kind of a southeasterly, well, it's more of a, east-southeasterly for most of the morning, and the temperatures were building. And then look at that, you get a big switch in the wind direction. The wind basically switches from an easterly to a westerly, and that's because the sea breeze kicks in. So, you know, the temperature's going to drop off when you get the wind switching direction. That sea breeze kicks in. The temperature gets so much over land that the wind will switch direction, and that will cut off the temperature. So the temperature is building all morning. The wind switches direction, that temperature drops right back down. So instead of being 25, it drops back down at around about 12 o'clock. If I play, actually, we can do a closer zoom in on that. So there we go. That's a better shot. There's that temperature dropping down as the wind switches direction. And then something interesting happens at 1 o'clock. For some reason, the sea breeze switches off, and that's probably to do with mixing inland. So sea breezes kick in when the land gets much warmer. So something to do with the mixing, perhaps that convection, the showers getting closer and the air getting more mixed. The sea breeze gets cut off, and you get back to that standard direction where the wind's coming from the east or southeast. That gets cut off, and look at the temperature. That jumps up again through the afternoon. So really unusual to see that sea breeze kicking in just for an hour or so, then it drops off, the temperature drops off, and then it picks up again. And that symbiotic relationship of how the temperature jumps up when the breeze changes. So I thought that was one more really fascinating thing. Again, that was Dan Harris picking that one out. So all the Dans in the operations centre, all our senior meteorologists were on the ball yesterday, spotting really interesting fascinating stuff about the weather. Okay, that was a quick look back at yesterday. Shall we have a look at what's going on in the future? Yeah, well, it's not that exciting. Across the UK, basically we've got high pressure. The high pressure is coming back. We've seen high pressure throughout spring. It's why it's been so dry. It's why it's been so sunny. This little low, that's what mixed things up a little bit, brought a bit of moisture, brought the thunderstorms, brought a lot more cloud across the southwest. But the high is going to win out again. And if we just zoom out a little bit, we can see why. Look at what the jet stream doing down here, wiggling like that. And if we move to maybe Wednesday, it shows this. Look at that. That is a classic omega block. You've got this loop here, loop here, loop here, low pressure flanking high pressure. This pattern of the jet stream is called an omega block because that looks like the capital letter, Greek letter omega. So you've got this omega block and it's sticking around, and under this upper ridge around the high pressure here, there's a ridge at the surface, high pressure at the surface, and it's really hard to shift this blocked weather pattern. So all the lows just swirl out here or out here, and we've got this chunky area of high pressure sitting over the UK, and that is likely to continue, as I say, as we go through the next several days. The high pressure is still there, even as we fast forward to Thursday, Friday. High pressure just meandering around to the north of the UK. So with high pressure here, what is that going to mean? Well, it is going to mean that the winds are going to be coming in around the high pressure clockwise. That's going to draw down cooler air, yes, but also a lot of moisture in and around the North Sea. So we are going to see those eastern areas plagued by mist and low cloud. Now, fret, whatever you want to call it, it's a fickle mistress, hard to pin down. Probably one of the hardest things for meteorologists to forecast because it's quite low level and it really is a fickle mistress. Hard to pick out the detail with this mist and low cloud. So it's one of the things that we'll be keeping a very close eye on, just exactly how much of this and fret affects the coast over the next few days. But eastern areas are going to be susceptible to that. But for the rest of us, high pressure is going to bring a lot of fine and sunny weather over the next few days, but it will have an impact on the temperatures. So today we're getting into the mid-20s. Tomorrow in the south, notice the warmth has just shifted down. So the warmth is down across South Wales, southern England. Could still get 23, 24, so still well above average. But look at these temperatures on the east coast. 14, 15 degrees, and it could get even lower. Again, it will depend exactly on the wind speed, but these temperatures here suppressed. Elsewhere, it's also going to turn a little cooler. It's not going to be as warm. I mean, still, we're likely to get over 20 Celsius in the south, and again, Western Scotland always favoured in this kind of wind direction, 20, 21 degrees likely here. That's well above average too. So west is best in terms of temperature. Those eastern areas are going to be cooler for sure, and at times they're also going to be cloudier as well as that feed comes in. Now, a subtle shift in the high will just change the wind direction by 5, 10 degrees, and that could have a big impact on where it stays cloudy on the east coast. So, yeah, it's one of those ones where your weather apps are not really going to nail it in those eastern areas. For many places, it'll just say fine and sunny, and that will be right. But in the east, it's going to come up with clouds. It's not going to come up with clouds. So, yeah, not really a week if you're on the east coast to be relying too heavily on your weather apps. Always check out your local forecast or your human-induced forecast. Best way to do that is to subscribe to our YouTube channel, right? And then you get, us telling you what the weather's going to be. But yeah, certainly for days ahead, it's going to be tricky to pin down that cloud on the east coast, and especially as we go into the weekend. But generally speaking, high pressure, a lot of dry weather, some warmth in the sunshine, but it will get generally a little cooler, and that east coast always cooler. Temperature in the North Sea at the moment, about 10 degrees, so that's why it's going to be chilly. If you've got the wind coming in here, then you're going to be lucky, certainly right on the coast, you're going to be lucky to get much above that 11, 12 maybe at best. That cloud might be thick enough at times for a little bit of drizzle, but generally speaking, it's just going to be a bit cloudy, and it should burn back to the coast a lot of the time. Any sign of anything else on the horizon? Well, yeah, there kind of is actually. Looking further ahead, there are some signs of a change. This is the weather pattern projection going forward through the days ahead, and yeah, a lot of red on the chart, blocked red, high pressure dominating for the next several days, even into the weekend and even into the early part of next week. But notice this, you're getting the steps the steps of blue doom start to gather. Well, many people are after some rain, right? So it's not the steps of blue doom, it's the steps of hope, maybe, if you're after rain, because these blue colours are more unsettled weather patterns, generally speaking, more low pressure dominated weather patterns, and they become more and more likely as we get towards particularly the back end of next week and the following weekend. Monday the 26th, that's a bank holiday. So yeah, that next weekend, it's not given, but you know, by the time we get to there, it's 60-40 in terms of the more unsettled patterns compared to the more settled weather patterns. Not going to go too much detail about this because Aidan will have much more on this in the 10-day trend tomorrow. So another good reason to subscribe. And then you won't miss the 10-day trend tomorrow. Aidan will be looking at that in more detail, no doubt. But yeah, there is a signal there, and it's been in the models for the past few runs now as well, that things are more likely to turn more unsettled as we head towards the end of the month, which is good news. If you are after rain, it has been an exceptionally dry spring, along with a very sunny spring as well. Again, lots more to come in those stats in the coming week because it has been a remarkable season overall. A couple of things I wanted to point out. The Met Office blog, if you're interested in what I was talking about earlier, lightning and thunderstorms, we issued a blog yesterday about LELA, which is our lightning detection service. LELA stands for Lightning Electromagnetic Emission Location by Arrival Time. That's how we measure lightning. There's basically 10 sensors across Europe, and the lightning's picked up in very low frequency as it bounces off the ionosphere, and then they use co-location to really determine where those lightning strikes were. It's state of the art. Yeah, if you're interested in that, check out the Met Office blog. We'll try and put a link in the chat. And there's another blog being published today about Mental Health Awareness Week and how the weather can impact your mental health as well. So check those two blogs out. One more plug, well, maybe two more plugs. Weather Studio Live. It's Aidan and I on Friday. So if you've got any questions for that, put it in the chat. And don't forget, we're on WhatsApp. So if you haven't joined our WhatsApp community, you can go and find the Met Office on WhatsApp as well. So yeah, plenty to get your teeth into. But yeah, thank you for watching. Hope you've enjoyed this week's deep dive. Let us know in the comments if you have or anything to add. And I'm going to say who's on next week. I'm not sure who's around next week, but Aidan will be doing the 10-day trend tomorrow, so you can check him out on that, and he'll give you more in that run-up to the bank holiday weekend. But thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again soon.